How matakapi. So, okay, Elijah Hopkins Demier. I want to welcome everyone to that's listening to us here to the Land-Based Learning podcast series hosted by myself, Elijah Hopkins, here at Fort Peck Community College. Um, our podcast is designed to create awareness about, I guess, cultural and language initiatives happening at the college, and we like to reach out to different individuals within the community and to that can share things about initiatives that they're doing that are cultural related and that the land Dako Ota i Koyake, there's a lot of things connected to it. And so I took the time to reach out to Tahanshi Isaac Miller, and he graciously accepted our invite. So I want to welcome you here, Tahanshi. But if you could maybe introduce yourself, that we can talk a little bit about some of the good work that you do, and then just let the conversation go over wherever it goes. So,
Uh, Omi Dakiapi, Chante Washte na Bechi Izapalo, Wambli, Omani Imachapi, Chewichasha, Himacha, Ina Mitawaki, Alberta Ironcloud, Ate Mitawaki, the late Jim Miller, Pahisite Imataha, Makbia Maza Tioshbaye. Good afternoon, good day, relatives. I want to greet you all with a handshake from my heart. I want to just let you know that I come from the Makbia Maza Tioshbaye. My family is the Ironcloud community from Porcupine, South Dakota, Hamaoklala, Lakota. My parents are the late Jim Miller from Cheyenne River, Oyate. And my Ina, she's Alberta Ironcloud from Pine Ridge, Porcupine, South Dakota. I am the founder of the modern day warrior movement. I have a grassroots led group that we started in 2015, and we're currently active here in the Fort Peck community. And some of the work that we do is that we started out cleaning. Excuse me. We clean yards for elderly. We mow grass for elderly, and we went around and started picking up trash in the community, helping with community gardens, helping with horsemanship clinics. And today we currently are feeding the homeless. We've been feeding them for 2 years now. Every other Sunday we feed in Wolf Point, and we feed in Poplar, and we feed up to about 100 people per feast. So part of that is giving back to our people. Our group is to help young people, find sobriety and follow our cultural ways and try to teach our young men and women some good teaching so they can pass it on to the future generations. But I just want to say it's an honor to be here, and I want to thank Elijah for inviting me here. And it's just kind of a little bit of the work that I do.
Tansha, one of my cultural teachers, Hohewe Chashtawa Tashunga Sab, the late Ken Ryan, he used to say, go to ceremonies and stuff. He would try and educate us as younger fellows. He said, one of the most sacred things you can do for somebody is to feed them. And so I always like when I see modern day warriors do things in the community, that's really important work. It's like kind of like a foundational cultural thing for Indian people to feed people. So especially those that are in the highest need. So I think that's really, we could all learn from those types of things. And so that's really good. But Tahashi, maybe it would be good, it'd be educational if you could maybe kind of like we talked about before we got on this call here was your father was part of this. My understanding, anyways, is that initiated the Dakota 38 ride, and I know that's been pretty impactful, throughout especially Dakota Ocheti Shakoe country. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that, and then how that segues maybe a little bit into the Sitting Bull ride. I've seen that on social media, and I think I know I'm excited about it. Maybe being a part of it, and maybe we could help promote it and what it's all about.
Excuse me. I My dad is the late Jim Miller. He passed away 4 years ago, but he had a dream through through a vision that he was supposed to have a horse ride, and this horse ride is to honor Dakota relatives, 38 men that were hung in 1862 by Abraham Lincoln, and so in 2005 he started a horse ride. It's a 330-mile horse ride, and it's from Lower Brule, South Dakota, to Mankato, Minnesota. And it's a 16-day horse ride, 330 miles in the winter. And it's Lila Osni, really cold. And so part of that dream that he received, he was shown and directed to carry these offerings on the horse, and all these different offerings he made for spirit food. It's the wasna. There were 7 different types of wasna that he was shown to carry on the horse, and that horse was going to carry our prayers, the Shunkawakan, 4-legged relatives. They were he was shown in his dream to take these offerings and these prayers over to these 38 warriors that were hung. And so each year I've been a privilege and honored to be a part of that ride. We met a lot of relatives from Canada, a lot of Dakota relatives from here in Fort Peck and Minnesota. So that ride is continuing to this day. We have another staff keeper who's in charge of that ride, who's carrying it on. But it's something that we're honored to be a part of, and we got to meet a lot of relatives. We got to pray and carry our offerings and our prayers over to. They call it Mankato, but it's really called Makato. And then Minnesota, it's actually called Minnesota, and that's the smoke that rises on the water. But today they call it Minnesota. So part of that horse ride, it was to connect with other relatives. We were able to reach out to other Dakota communities and invite them to be a part of it, and so we helped fulfill that dream. And then in 2008, there was a documentary created about the ride, and it's called the Dakota 38, and you can find it on YouTube. Those of you who don't have a copy of the DVD, you can find it on YouTube. But it's a very powerful film, and that film has been shown in all over the world, all over the country. We've seen it in prisons, we've seen it in treatment centers, talking circles, group circles, churches, colleges. It's been all over. So I encourage you to look up Dakota 38 on YouTube and watch the full video. It's a very powerful and emotional film about our history of our Dakota relatives. History is really one-sided. You never hear the true story of what really happened to our people. And so I encourage you to go watch Dakota 38 on YouTube.
And then in Fort Peck, it's an interesting place because if you look at the history, we have, I think almost every band of the Oceti Shankoi is represented one way or another throughout the history. And so, in my family too, we have some Santi Dakota, but also there's, I think they called them the Goopies. That's what Dekshi Tommy told me. He said back in the day, there was all these Dakotas and the Lakotas, some of them that were in Canada that came back down to Fort Peck. They call them the Goopies. And Goopy, my understanding means like they're coming back. Goopy. So they are coming back, returning back. And so those are those individuals, my understanding, that kind of followed the Wichiana, different Dakota, Hunktoa, the Hunk Papa band, all these different ones up into Canada. And then my understanding then is that my audio cut out for some reason here, but anyways, hopefully you can hear me. Standing is that like in some of our families, they were in Canada and they came back and they settled, and some of them followed Sitting Bull, and my understanding Sitting Bull was in this area. And by Chelsea, and my wife's family is kind of they're related. And then Sitting Bull and some of the father, but some of those families stayed here, and some of them went into Standing Rock, and so. But there's a whole history that I think is rich, and I think it's really cool that yourself and different individuals with this Sitting Bull honoring ride. I believe you're kind of retracing those steps, right? And so, do you have any like dates on kind of when that's happening, and kind of what does that look like? How could because some of us are kind of horse people, but some of us aren't.
Yeah.
What are the different ways maybe people could be a part of that, or is there if there's any planning meetings that public could be a part of? Uh, Anything you want to share about that would be good.
Uh-huh. On June 7th, we're having a horse ride. Excuse me. We're having a horse ride on June 7th from the Poplar Rodeo Grounds. That's where it's gonna be our camping day. But the dates are June 7th through the 11th, and we're gonna be riding from Poplar, Montana, Fort Peck Reservation to Fort Buford, North Dakota, and we want to invite all the descendants, all the horse people, the young men, women, elders, veterans, warriors, all the relatives here. We'd like them to take part in it. So we've been planning this ride for about a year now, and we've been having weekly meetings with the Spotted Bull Recovery Resource Center, the Fort Peck Community College, the CHAP program, the Fort Peck Head Start. We're reaching out to other programs here and asking them to be a part of it. We have a few board members that have been participating in our meetings, and so we want to do a ride to honor Lala Sitting Bull. We want to remember the relatives that came down from Wood Mountain, Cypress Hills, and the relatives that stayed here in Fort Peck. And when he went to Sitting Bull, when he turned himself in, that's what I like to say is he turned himself in. He never surrendered. He never surrendered. I think he was thinking about his people, and his people were lonesome, and they wanted to come back to their original homeland. So the Washichu, the white man, they say that he surrendered, but he never surrendered. We still have our way of life. We still have our teachings, our ceremonial, gatherings. We still have our language, our culture, and there's still songs today that our people still carry. So we're organizing a horse ride, and everybody's welcome. If anybody wants to contribute in any way, if anybody wants to help with food or come help be a part of it, it's for everybody. We want to bring some healing to our community. Just like all Native communities, we all struggle with addiction, alcohol, drugs. Suicide is a really high rate in communities, and there's a lot of negative things that our people are going through. So this is kind of a way to kind of uplift our people and learn about the history and find out who we come from. And digging into this ride and getting involved with it, I found out myself, I'm a descendant of Makbia Maza and another chief named Knife Chief, and relatives, they fought with Sitting Bull at the Battle of Little Bighorn. And so I grew up hearing all those stories, those oral history about how the battle took place and what happened. And my great grandpa, my relative, the Knife Chief, he had two wives. And one of the Unchi's names was Runs for Hill, and the other one was Red Necklace. And they got their names from the battle. Runs for Hill, she helped carry the wounded and help the elderly and the children and everybody get to safety during the fight. And then Red Necklace, my other Unchi, she got her name from taking a red scarf off of a soldier during the battle. And so after the battle with Custer and the Battle of Greasy Grass, they traveled up to Wood Mountain, but they came through here, Fort Peck, and they had relatives here. And so some of them stayed on the way up, and then some of them traveled into they traveled into Wood Mountain, Cypress Hills. And so there's a lot of history of, my grandfathers and grandmothers, that were part of this journey, and so they're gonna, we're trying to organize a ride to kind of help pray for those grandpas and grandmothers that were on that journey, all the relatives that didn't make it, and the ones that did make it. And so we turned this ride into a 4-day ceremony. It's a 4-day ride. The first day, we're going to be riding out of Poplar at the rodeo grounds, and that's going to be on the 8th. We're going to ride to Brockton. We'll be camping at the Brockton rodeo grounds, powwow grounds, excuse me. And then from there, we'll ride from Brockton over to Culbertson, and then from Culbertson to Bainville, and then from Bainville, the final day, we'll be riding into Fort Buford. So we're planning to take some teepees, and it's like a moving camp. We want to take work crews, and we'll have security, and we'll have people that are going to be wanting to come and feed the riders, and we want to reach out to everybody and ask them, come and be a part of it. Come show your support, show that unity. Our people are, in ways, we have a lot of that history, a lot of the descendants here in the community, Fort Peck, and we want to bring people together and hopefully do our best to have something for our young people to carry on. So everybody's welcome. Come out and see the riders. Come see if you want to help set up a teepee, you want to learn how to set up a teepee, you want to come and learn the history, maybe you want to bring something for the riders or the horses. It's for everybody. So we look forward to completing this journey. So June 7th through the 11th, Poplar, Montana to Fort Buford, and everybody's welcome, and we look forward to connecting with our relatives to be a part of this journey.
Oh, no, that's really good. I think, as part of my role at the college here is, I guess it's president for student services, but I also do some grant work, coordinating cultural activities, cultural arts, language, revitalization, different things like that. And so I think anytime there's opportunities that we can get out and connect on the land, I think is really, really important. Because otherwise, I think if we don't, I think it's kind of unnatural. I think we need to connect with other people. And I think if we isolate too much, I think that's kind of the root of a lot of our health problems. And that in turn turns into, kind of like mental health problems and different traumas that we go through, intergenerational family things, just the conditions sometimes that our families are a part of. So I think one of the ways that we're able to be healthy is to recognize our role, I guess, in engaging with the larger community. Is our own mental health is connected to community health. That's one of my things, is that we help ourselves by helping other people. And so whether we know it or not, we're part of the land, so we're not really separate. And so yeah, no, I really appreciate that. I'll definitely try promoting that here at the local level with our college, and I know we'll definitely get some more participation. So but yeah, Tanshi, I was thinking, anything else? I'm really interested to hear some of your takes on, because I know you're a cultural person. It's my understanding the Forebears ranch up here. There's a Inipi up there, and I see you're really welcoming about encouraging, inviting people up, and I know you're part of that. And is there anything that you want to like share about that specifically, or any maybe like your personal story, man? We were kind of teasing, joking about, back in 8th grade, but anything, because when I was younger, I went to high school, Rapid City, and sometimes some of us would fall into the wrong crowds, man. Yeah. And, some of my bros were some of the Iron Clouds, man. The boys, TBZ. So some of those guys, like, it was good. It was some friendship, but sometimes you fall into like, not always doing the right things. And I think spirituality and culture kind of like helped ground me back into like a healthy way of being, even though it's sometimes we try to find like belonging through things like that that ain't always healthy, you know. But really, there's because there's that void, there's that lack, and because I believe, especially indigenous people, we are intuitively we are we want to connect to societies, and so these voids come in, you know, like gang mentality, but also like, but really, anything you want to share about that?
Oh, so a little bit about my story and about my journey is, nobody's perfect. Everybody makes mistakes. We all stumble. A long time ago, I was fortunate when I was a young man to grow up in a sober home. My parents were both in recovery, and they were both victims, of the boarding school. And so growing up, my parents they tried their best to raise our family, my brothers and sisters, and so I grew up around ceremony. I grew up the traditional way. I grew up going into Nipi. I grew up going into Sundance, Wewangwachi, Humblecha, the Vision Quest. So I remember being a young man, always traveling up to Bear Butte, Matopaha, and putting relatives up on the hill. And so I grew up working around the arbor, Sundance Arbor. I grew up working around the Nipi, cutting the firewood and hauling the rocks, the water. And so over time, when I got older and I became a young man and a teenager, I kind of, just like anybody, started experimenting with drugs and alcohol, and eventually started to join a gang. I grew up in the gang life, and from there, I ended up going to jail, JDC, at a young age, and then, getting older. When I was 18, I turned 18 in an adult jail, and so I've been in and out of life, my on the streets, and seeing drugs and alcohol. And but when I was sitting in jail, I that's when I kind of had an experience with Creator, and I prayed and I asked Creator, if you grant me my freedom, I'll do my best to help the young people. I'll do my best to go and travel as far, go wherever it takes me in this journey to help our people with sobriety. And so that's where Modern Day Warriors comes from. I grew up hard knocks. I grew up fighting on the way to school, at school, fighting on my way home from school. And so I think I didn't know then that sobriety was the key. So I started Modern Day Warriors, and our group has done so many things. We've helped young people with sobriety through ceremony, through Sweat Lodge and Nipi and Nigaga. We have a weekly ceremony. We have a Nipi here on Fort Peck, Poplar, Montana, and we kind of encourage everybody to come and pray. You got to go and find your way. So my biggest encouragement is sobriety. I encourage everybody to stay on the red road. It's a hard road, but it's a good road. And so I'm just following up with my word. I'm keeping my word to Creator, and I'm helping people and giving back, and I volunteer, and doing my best to be a good relative. And what I was taught is that when you come into this world, you're pure, and you got to live your life pure. So it's always sad to see our young men and women give up because they have nobody to turn to. So I try to really listen, and I try to sit down and just listen and be a good listener, because a lot of people, sometimes our young men and women, that's all they need is somebody to encourage them, to uplift them. So I started Modern Day Warriors to help people, and we have a lot of active members, and we're not affiliated with any tribal program, or I'm currently in the stages of trying to get a nonprofit, a 501c3. But I've had other people in the community that are good-hearted and want to create change. So I've been working with other people. They've been so nice to welcome me in our group to come in to do presentations, or help out with the schools. So one thing that I really enjoy doing is giving back.
Mm.
That's the best thing. Our ancestors, our warriors, our chiefs, they made sure everybody was fed in the camp. They made sure everybody was taken care of. And so that's the mindset that I have when I go out and feed in the community. We feed up to 100 people, and it's all funds and food that are donated to from the community. People come and they bring food, or they bring water, or they bring supplies and drinks. So when you pray with that food, you're giving people life, and that food is medicine. That many we chose on you, that water of life is medicine. So a lot of people when they make your food or when you cook, a little tip is that when you do that, you pray with it, because you don't know if that food's going to be feeding a mourner. You don't know if it's going to be feeding somebody that's having a hard time. So I really try to encourage the people to pray with the food, and we smudge the food, we smudge the people, and now we can't depend on our leaders. It takes us as people, as young men, as warriors, to bring back our ways, to keep our ways going. And everybody makes mistakes. Nobody's perfect. We're living in a time now where we live in technology. And so our young men and women, they're distracted because they're always on their cell phones or they're always on social media. And to me, I really think that those apps, they ruin families. People are distracted, and families are being ruined, and the young kids, they're the ones that you know need to be shown another way. Like growing up, I was taught to you work in the home, you help get up and clean and cook, and take care of your animals, and help out somebody. So today we kind of expect something in return if we're going to help somebody. But I encourage you to just go and sit with an elder, learn from them. Every day we're losing our language, we're losing our songs, we're losing our elders that have that knowledge. So I encourage you to get out there and talk with an elder, maybe reach out to a family that needs help or support. We need more warriors. We need to bring back our warriors, and our women. They're the most sacred human beings that we have. We wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for the Wia. So I always encourage the Wia to take part in the ceremonies, and encourage others to include them in the ceremonies, because us men, we kind of have an ego and we took over things, but it's the women who brought the ceremonies. Our Chanupa comes from a woman. Our ceremonies, our laws, they come from the Desawi, the white buffalo calf woman. So anytime you get a chance to include a Wia in the ceremony, it's powerful because there's a balance there. And so I encourage you to maybe let a woman pray with the food, or have a woman smudge, or have a woman to speak first, because we have to uplift our women. They're the backbone of our nation. And so these are just teachings that I was taught along the way. And our leaders, spiritual leaders, spiritual men, are people. We need to come together. And that's my prayer, is that we'll unite. And I think a lot of good things will happen for our people. Like this horse ride, we want to reach out to veterans, warriors, spiritual people, people that want to come and pray with us, because we all need a lot of prayers. Everybody needs healing. Our land, kind of talked a little bit about the land. Anytime you're walking on Mother Earth, on Chimaka, you're walking in a sacred way. So you got to carry yourself in a good way. We have to be good relatives. And so I try to work with everybody. I try to encourage, even to just reach out to people, invite them to be a part of it, But I really think that we have to really teach our young men and women to find out where they come from. They got to know where they come from to know where they're going. So I really think, like podcasts like this, and thank you for allowing me to come in and speak, because this is how we reach people, through social media. Anymore, we don't sit down and just talk like this and have conversations and visit. And it's either through a text or through an email or a phone call. So this is good. I'm really feel good today. I'm happy. It's a beautiful day here in Fort Peck, and we want to leave something behind for our young men and women to follow, other than drugs, alcohol, suicide. There's a lot of I hate to keep bringing that up, but that's the reality that we live in, and people don't really feel comfortable talking about that, but it's the truth. And up here in Montana, here at Fort Peck, there's a lot of beautiful sacred sites here. And there's seven council fires that are represented here in Fort Peck. So the young people might look around and see it as just nothing here, but there's a lot of history here. There's a lot of beautiful things here, and I think if we just take time to sit down and visit like this, we can find out, who our family is, who our relatives are, and just kind of encourage everybody to don't give up, keep going strong, and there's beautiful things ahead. So
Oh, well, Pidama, Tanshe, some of our listeners might be aware of some of the things that we do at the college here. Oh, one of the things a few years back, 3, 4 years ago, I approached the tribal council here and asked if they would allow Fort Peck Community College to do a buffalo harvest. Not just give us the meat, but like to allow us to get that, have that opportunity to go harvest the animal and to do it ethically and culturally the best way we can, because people like me, I'm learning, in my 40s now, and I'm still trying to figure things out. And so I really like doing that, and that's just an example of one of the things that we try to do. And we try to use the buffalo hide as much as we can. We don't just take it to a processor, but we also recognize that not everybody can do that, because it ain't like a deer we can throw in the back of your truck. Sometimes those are just big animals, man. And so we're still kind of modern. We're kind of loaded up through a winch, and we have a shop east of Poplar here, and we'll take the hide off. We'll work on it the best way we can. Got some freezers, and so we try to use that animal and use it for different parts of. Even though some people in the community, they don't like wild game.
yeah,
Tanshi, I know. I noticed that I got an elk. Me and Tanshi Cole, we went to the Missouri River Breaks. We got an elk. We were lucky enough to do that, but that was part of our land-based learning and getting out there. And well, I noticed we have that meat out here, and I noticed not a lot of people like eating it.
yeah,
But they say that only takes 1 or 2 generations to change. I think the Washichu term is the palate, our taste of meats and things that we ate a lot. Now we prefer beef. The only reason I say that is because I think sometimes we get it's called a mental model of what we're used to doing. So trying new things, I think I'd encourage. I got to hold myself accountable to that too. Is sometimes getting out more and doing things that are a little uncomfortable, but it's things that are healthy. So I'd encourage people to take Tanshi up on his offer and be part of that, and meet some new people and ground yourself in healthy things. And just to give listeners, maybe Tanshi, you might not even know, but some of the work that we do here at the college that I'm a part of is cultural arts. The cultural arts, I get these grants. One of our major funders is the American Indian College Fund. So they give tribal colleges good little pots of money. And so people like me, I'll apply for it. And then my job is to coordinate events and activities, and then identify master artists in the community. They might not want to call themselves master artists, but that's what the granting agencies likes, those terms, master artists. And so I try to identify these individuals, do community workshops that are not academic. So meaning that you don't have to be a student, you just any old community member, tribal member, non-tribal, whoever, they just come over and they can participate. And so I know in the past, Nash, you did some work with our ag department. You did like Wapaha, like made those. That was, I could tell you have some like really good craftsmanship skills, man. So maybe down the road we could identify some things that you do, man. We could do some, because what I noticed with these workshops is that especially if it's not academic based, there's no power structures. It's like we're all just ikjea. We can sit around, and we're just sharing things, man. And I noticed people that normally probably weren't talking and visiting as much, if there's something for them to do and they want to learn culturally, they can do it. Next thing you know, they're starting to talk and visit, got some food. Over the course of 3, 4 days, we'll have these workshops. And I noticed these bonds started to create. And it's part of that mental health, that wellness. I think it's a health. So I really, even though sometimes it's a lot of work and sometimes it's on top of what I'm doing, I just like try to make it a point to do it anyways because it brings people together. And so maybe share a little bit about, because I know like it's kind of therapeutic. Those of us
Yeah.
that do things, like I love making bows. Itazipe. There's a guy from down that, Richard Gallego. I brought him up here about 10 years ago. He kind of showed me how to make plain style Lakota bows. And so then I've been doing that every year pretty much since then. And it isn't even that I'm that good at it. It's just that I think it's just a lot of us, especially us men,
Yeah.
boys, my son's that way. I had we did a bow making workshop this last summer and he's bouncing off the walls normally like, but when we were working with him on this bow and I gave him some tools and he was sitting there, that was probably the first time I've seen him so quiet and focused and relaxed. It's because he was around people and he was outside of a traditional classroom and he was working with his hands and he was in his element, man. So I was like, more kids need that exposure, man. And unfortunately, a lot of kids don't have those opportunities, man, for whatever reason. So I guess that's one of my callings, I think, is to promote space and opportunities for all community members, but especially these kids, man, to get like their hands on things. And some of that stuff is it's doable.
Yeah.
It's totally doable. So maybe do you want to share your thoughts on that or any experiences that you have or any possible things that maybe you think might be good ideas to partner with like for cultural arts? That would be good, Tasha.
I think everybody has a gift. Everybody has a way of either working with their hands, or some people are artists, some people are good with education, some people are good with music. Everybody has a talent, everybody has a gift. And when you put those people together, a lot of good creations come about. So I think it's really important that our young men and women or elders, anybody, it's never too late to learn, whether you want to learn how to do some beadwork or quill work, or learn how to tan hides, or even make bapa, cut up meat. That's the way of our ancestors. We tanned our own hides. We lived out off the buffalo, the Tatanka. Nothing went to waste. All the tools. And so I think anybody out there who has a gift, I just encourage you to follow through with it. The only thing stopping ourselves from doing anything or learning anything is ourselves. So I think people, once you have that mindset, of wanting to learn something, it's never too late to learn. Even the language, even if you just know a few words, a song or two, it's really important, because we have to leave something behind for our young men and women. I really strive to encourage that. Even with my own children, I try to take them with me everywhere I go, to either ceremonies, or maybe taking them to Bear Butte to hike, or maybe go get grandfathers some eons in the mountains, for Nipi. So I think something about art is never ending, whether it's cultural, whether it's education, whether it's music, whatever it is that you're good at. I encourage you to follow your path, because we have to carry on our ways. We have to learn our language. Myself, I'm not fluent. I don't know fluently language. I grew up in a home where it was fluent, where my spoke Lakota. And so the language is different, the dialect, the Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, but it's all the same. We just have that different dialect. So working with your hands and creating different things is a rewarding feeling. You go home with a good feeling, and it encourages you. It makes you want to do more. It makes you want to maybe pick up a little bit more materials, or learn how to make moccasins, or there's always something to do here on the reservation. That's one thing that I'm really proud of, is that everybody has a skill, and that's what I really enjoy about working with the street people is because they're educated, they're talented, they're athletes, they know the language, they know the songs, so I encourage you guys to do your best. Always just try, don't give up, whether you know a little bit or you know a lot, it all matters, So part of artwork is to pass on that knowledge, pass on those gifts to others so they can carry it on, So a lot of people they just need to come and sit and even just watch something being made. It inspires them, it uplifts them, it does something to them, culturally, So we all have that connection to our ancestors, whether it's being around the fire, they smell that wood smoke, or they smell that sage, that medicines. It inspires them to want to be involved in their culture. So I think education is the key. I know in this world, if you want to really go far in life, stick to them books, and study and work hard and sacrifice. So kind of growing up in Indian country, everybody kind of has to have a trade, everybody has to have a way to make maza ska, so some people support their families by their crafts, their beadwork, artwork, woodwork, drum making. So one thing I was privileged to learn growing up was how to make the wapaha, the war bonnets, and that was passed down to me from one of my relatives, my uncles. I sat and I watched him take apart a whole wombly and how to, clean them and how to, make those wiakas. They're powerful. They carry our prayers. So it's not just putting a headdress together. There's a ceremony involved, a cultural involved. So I learned probably about 16, 17. I've been making headdresses, and I I know there's a lot that goes into that. Some people say our veterans can only wear them. Some say our elders can only wear them. But long ago, our warriors, they're the ones who earned those bonnets. Those headdresses are called a deeds bonnet. And those were all the good deeds that they were, accomplished in their life. The things maybe one feather represented, you fed the community. One feather, you helped a relative, with clothing or, raids or battle, things that you did in battle. So a long time ago, if you see the warriors, they all have the headdresses. They say the chiefs are the ones that wear the headdresses, but our chiefs were really humble. You look at a chief long ago, they just had plain clothes on and maybe one or two feathers in their hair. So I was privileged to learn a little bit about making a wapaha and what it represents, and for me, I really enjoy working with my hands. I really enjoy sitting down, lighting up a smudge, and just like early in the morning, I would get up early when it's quiet, and it's a real peaceful time for me to work. And so it's therapeutic, and I get a lot of healing from that, So yeah, just take a few steps, and get involved. And it's never too late to learn. If you want to make something, if you want to get involved, just reach out to, people in the community, the protocol way is to bring them tobacco, bring some offerings and tell them that you want to learn or tell them that you want to either make some regalia for your grandson or your nephew or niece or someone in the powwow, or there's always ways of approaching people and bringing them that tobacco. So that's one teaching I'll leave with here today is that there's protocols in our ways, so it's always good to carry that on in a good way. If there's anything you want to learn, just go sit with an elder, take them some offerings, take them some tobacco, maybe some coffee or a little bit of groceries or something. Those are ways that we're losing. We don't have those teachings anymore. So yeah, man, it's a good thing to be able to pass on whatever knowledge you have for the future generations. So so I encourage people not to be stingy with those teachings. You gotta leave something behind for young men and women to carry forward.
Hmm. There's a part of the work that I do is I always view culture in our Dakota Uchoha as kind of like a lifelong learning thing for myself and So I'm always trying to connect with other people, individuals like yourself, Tanshi. And then I thought I heard you say you're from Porcupine.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's an elder individual. His name's Jerome Kills Small. I visit with him dang near every week for the past 3, 4 years or so. Every once in a while we don't visit, but through Zoom I was connected to him through Earl Bullhead, actually Earl Bullhead. And then so I was just visiting with him the other day, and but there's some couple other individuals, and so I'm always in because I'm not fluent either. You know, I teach Dakota language at the University of Minnesota online through Zoom the past few years, and it's good, you know, introductory level. But I'm always trying to push myself to get more and more, I guess, deepen my understanding because our language is kind of connected to through songs.
Yeah.
And I know you're a singer, Tasha. Beautiful voice. I remember I was at I think it was my son Gabe when he was in Head Start. They had some event over here at Greet the Dawn building a few years back, and I remember you came in and you were singing. I think it was Old MacDonald Had a Farm, but you indigenized it. You know, it was kind of cool, man. Like with the drum, and so those kids they don't probably get to hear that a lot, and so I know my kids' ears perked up. That was cool, and so. But there's ways to continue to engage with those things, and for my own learning, it's really good. And so I try to make it a point to connect with elders.
Yeah.
I think it's too easy to just want to do things just academically or whatever. But if there's an opportunity, definitely encourage that, man. But I also recognize that some people don't. They don't really have those connections yet, and so I always try to record things. That's part of the work that I'm doing here is that we push the word out. And so some of these elders that I record, some of those conversations they might seem kind of dull, but really hidden underneath there's the code wichotawachi, like our wichotawachi is like our mentality, I guess you would say. That's what actually John used to tell me. Still tells me. So whenever I'm trying to like learn language or do different things, always have an underlying philosophy of our indigenous ways, you know. So I always try to be intentional with that and my own development, language learning, and even through songs, old recordings. It's called the Densmore Collection.
Yeah.
Have you heard that one?
I've heard of it. But
yeah, I'll give you a copy of that. I was over in Rapid City. They have that language conference every year. It's usually in October, and I think his name was Courtney Yellowfat. Anyway, he's from Standing Rock, but Earl introduced me to him, and he had copies of this. And there was a lot of Densmore back in, I don't know when it was, early 1900s, recorded some individuals, speakers, songs, a series of songs, and they digitized them. It was on that wax cylinder. But there was also some in there, and he gave me this USB, and I'd heard of those. But there was also a set of songs from Sisseton. And so a little different dialect, but there was a bunch of these old songs. It was called the Ticketless Society. It was one of them. There was a group of warriors that refused to get a ration number and go into the forts. They were kind of the last ones. But it was like almost like a song of defiance, you know, because you were talking about Sitting Bull refused to surrender. He just turned himself in. But that mentality, I really like that. But there's a series of songs, and when I listen to elders speak and pray, there's a term that I heard in one of those songs. And so I would ask elders, Hedako ka, what does that mean? Hedako ka. But this word was ohunkeshne. Ohunkeshne. And I was like, what is it referring to? And so the way it was explained to me, it kind of refers to like the most vulnerable amongst us. So ohunkeshne is like the weak, the elderly, like the children, all those. And so I always kind of remembered that term. It kind of stuck with me, man. So when we're feeding people, I think there's, like you were saying, there's some of the times our street people, they get a bad rap, man, because, they're, for whatever reason, they found themselves in that situation, but they have a story and they have some knowledge. And I remember I was visiting with my Tanshis in the past over the years, but sometimes some of them are fluent speakers back in the day. They were like, they're knowledge keepers, but they're just, uh, some decisions for whatever reasons. That's just where they found themselves. And so I think engaging with them, because humanizing people too, is that engaging with them. So I really appreciate that work, man. It's a good perspective, man, and we can all bring them into the fold and bring ourselves into the fold with them as well. So, but yeah, I know, Tanshi, I think we had a good conversation, man, for now. But do you have any parting comments or anything else you want to share? Or?
I just want to remind everybody, June 7th through the 11th, uh, Poplar, Montana to Fort Buford, North Dakota, Sitting Bull Honor Ride. Everybody's welcome. We encourage everybody to come and join us. Come and learn that history. We want to reach out to the descendants here in Fort Peck. Everybody's welcome. Come and bring your riders, bring your horses, your horsemen, horsewomen, elders, veterans, warriors, our leaders, spiritual leaders. June 7th through the 11th, Poplar, Montana to Fort Buford, Sitting Bull Honor Ride.
Hanakcha, Doksta, Akewa, Chia Kapikte, Metakepi, Hohech Tudo.
Wopila.